Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after a disappointing Major 3 in Toronto, OpTic have revealed that they believe iLLeY will be back and well in time for the Major 4 qualifiers if everything goes to plan over the coming days, and also explaining their perspective on why they fell short this past weekend. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really helps the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to dive into today. First of all, wanted to mention this. Thought it was rather funny that you guys might remember, I think it was this time last year maybe, when Asim's younger brother Yusuf was apparently just destroying pros and 8 lobbies and stuff. Now, you know, Zuma may be getting some back right here, who knows, not making game into Brute Oblivion, but, you know, lessons learned, I'm sure, going forwards. This past weekend, of course, Seattle Surge, they won the Major. Unbelievable fashion that they did it in. So many storylines coming out of this, the FaZe stuff, the OpTic stuff we'll dive into here in a few seconds' time. But, of course, one of the key points is, from my perspective, is, okay, which of these teams that didn't win this event, that might be on the cusp of making champs, are actually going to decide to try and make some moves? We'll talk about that later today, but the fact of the matter is, if you're like a 5th through 8th team right now, like, okay, you might make champs, you might just about make champs with your current roster, or maybe you're on the cusp right now of maybe making it, maybe not making it, but still, if you make champs and come top 8, who really cares? It's all about trying to build a team that can actually win. Seattle believe they can, OpTic I'm sure believe they can, Toronto, FaZe probably can, the other teams maybe not, right? And that's the thing with a guy like Prolute. If iLLeY is back and well again, like, you know, does Prolute go to another team? Is he going to be kept on as a sub anyway? Like, are people going to be knocking at the door for OpTic to say, look, if iLLeY's back, can we get Prolute to our team? That's certainly a possibility. I'm sure he probably wants some clarification on that, as we might well see in the coming minutes' time. Now, first of all, wanted to discuss this, because this is honestly, I think, a really big deal, and it maybe isn't quite getting the discussion that it deserves right now with the community, because Modern Warfare 2 apparently is going to introduce a map editor into Call of Duty. We know full well that maps make Call of Duty games. You look at the kind of, you know, top maps of all time competitive rankings we did on Breaking Point a few days ago. We had Black Ops 2 maps, Black Ops 3 maps, Advanced Warfare, pretty much like maybe a bit of COD 4, bit of like, you know, Infinite Warfare, maybe, who knows, a couple of other ones, Ghost, for example. Like, it's really that era of maps that really stands out in COD history as, kind of, what, some of the best maps ever. Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, great examples. The last few years certainly hasn't been the case. Black Ops Cold War, I think, last year pretty much got saved by the Black Ops 2 maps coming through. It doesn't really matter what the movement is, what the weapons are like and stuff like this. If the maps are good, the game is more than likely going to play very well indeed. And often I think the maps that the developers come up with, especially nowadays, running out of ideas a little bit, they just make something, say, okay, that's good enough, let's just ship it out there and give it to the guys, and hopefully, hopefully it's good enough for the casual players. But for competitive, often some tweaks, like, it would actually be a very good idea. And we've seen occasionally in COD history where pros might say, or like maybe casual players might say, okay, this probably isn't a great feature of this map, like this line of sight or this doorway here or whatever, we might want to move it around. Now, apparently now we can do that ourselves and effectively say, okay, this is a version of our map which we think will be better. And honestly, this creates some incredible potential here. Now, as Brian says, is the era of horrendous maps finally over? Because in a game like Counter-Strike, if you know what you're doing, you can actually go in and edit the maps, take the source files, edit them in the way that you like, and say, okay, I think this will be a superior version of the map, and then people can play on it, right? And apparently they're bringing a similar thing to Call of Duty with the potential that, you know, fans or pros or development teams or whatever can use a map editor for the maps that they bring to the game. I'm not sure you'll be able to build your own map from the ground up, but you might be able to take an existing map and change things around on it so that it plays theoretically in a much better way. So you might be able to take a lot of maps that in Call of Duty history the last few years might have potential, but you know, even a map like Tuscan or something, it's a pretty good one, but I feel like with a few changes and also just spawns, which is very key indeed, could actually, you know, could make the maps an awful lot better, right? Especially in some of these situations that the developers either really don't know how to do nowadays like they did back in the day, or just don't quite have the time for, right? Which I think is a really exciting possibility. So the leak goes as follows. Modified maps will allow the creator the option of customizing spawn points, objectives, and restrictions with the ability of completely changing the scenery of a level and its individual properties, such as crates and containers. So like, you should be able to move some things around, change the spawn points. Okay, it might not be as expansive or as quite as good as what is possible in Counter-Strike, for example, but it is at least something, right? Because I'm sure some of these maps we have in this game and in previous games with a few tweaks would be an awful lot better for competitive, especially on the spawn side. And the possibility that we can do that in this year going forwards, maybe it's going to be a 2-year game, is I think very exciting for the competitive scene. Now, of course, well, who's ready for the CDL teams, as Ghost of Hope says, to argue over map edits, right? That is kind of what this implies. Instead of just dealing with what we have, people can say, okay, we think the spawn point should be here for this particular hill, and then another team says, okay, we think they should be here though, and then this guy said, okay, well, this crate, we want to move it like slightly to the left because of this reason, and the other team says, you know, whatever. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of talk about this, but it's exciting that we have the possibility to do that, and the teams might be able to agree that, okay, this is probably a good change to the map, let's just edit it ourselves, and then just effectively submit it to the game or whatever, and then developers can say, okay, yeah, cool, we'll use your version. I don't really know, but yeah, theoretically, this could be really good for competitive. Now, this I just wanted to mention because it did happen before in a Treyarch game where Killer is GOAT. If he goes no, you know, round 11 stats nowadays. But effectively, he posted on the Black Ops 4 subreddit during the beta, I believe, that this is Seaside, of course, from Black Ops 4. And he said that, like, look, why is this balcony on the left-hand side here not accessible? Like, why are you just flooding through this choke point here to B? He basically made this post that said, allow the balcony area to be accessible so it's not impossible to push through. Ideally, it would look like this. And Matt Sconce at Treyarch saw this post and he said, okay, that's actually a good idea. Let's do it, right? And that's exactly what they did. They allowed this to be accessible, and they added an extra kind of doorway here on the top side. So you guys might remember from the actual Seaside game when it arrived into the full game itself, and that was how the game was. And people suggesting this and Treyarch listening to it was rather cool. But in this circumstance, you could actually do this yourself, make the version yourself, and say, okay, this we think will be better, and then allow people to play on it. Who knows? I think there's some really exciting possibilities here. Exciting to see how this goes going forwards. And as Drill says, Activision thought, you know, screw it. You guys all complain about maps. You can make it yourself, right? Which I'm sure we're honestly rather happy to do at this point. Let's dive into the OpTic stuff then. So, of course, they don't have the greatest time this past weekend. A top 6 for them. I'm sure they think they should have got at least top 4 this weekend. Of course, like if they'd have beaten Thieves, they'd have probably played Toronto, a very hot Toronto at their home event. That might not have gone too well for them, given, I suppose, their history the last couple of years playing up against Toronto. But of course, yeah, top 6, not what they were looking for. I mean, Shotzi still just doing some absolutely ridiculous stuff like this, of course, the entirety of the weekend. But look, I think it seems very clear now that they do want iLLeY back in the team. We've known that for quite some time, especially after this result. They're probably thinking, look, iLLeY might have been one of the key factors just to kind of keep our head in a good space, because we know that iLLeY's kind of been the in-game leadership type figure on the team, and we did wonder, I think, to some degree, and I think Rambo was kind of wondering before the tournament began with Prolute coming there, but like, look, when the pressure's on in these kind of key moments, when you need someone to calm the team down and be the kind of leader in the team, if you don't have iLLeY, like, you know, is that going to cost you in certain situations? I feel like we did kind of see in the Thieves series pretty much exactly that. Now, despite the bad series Prolute had up against Florida, I thought he played pretty much great for the rest of the weekend. Certainly did a solid job, especially with very limited LAN experience on a stage like that. He says, you know, I hope I get to play on the stage again and redeem myself. So maybe he's not too confident that he'll be playing again on the OpTic team, just because, well, we believe that iLLeY might well be returning very soon indeed. He reckons he might have another chance at some points. I'm sure he will, maybe for the rest of the season on another team, or maybe on OpTic if iLLeY can't return. But well, this is what kind of was said in Rambo's chat, and there's a clip clarifying this here in just a second. But what is described as that Indy will have a procedure done on his thumb. We are hopeful that he will be well in time for Major 4. I'm guessing they mean the Major 4 qualifiers right here, because of course it's only 2 weeks away. Now, I believe this procedure is being done, I think maybe tomorrow or the day after or something like that. Like iLLeY talked about it a little bit a few days ago. It's not something major, not something particularly invasive as Rambo describes, but it should get done what is required to make sure iLLeY's thumb is at full capacity by the time the Major 4 qualifiers come around.
All right, let's talk about iLLeY a little bit. So iLLeY is going to get I'll call it a procedure. It's not like, it's something that's really not invasive, done to his thumb to try and get him back online, and that's going to be in a few days. So, basically, he's going to go see a doc. They're going to do something. It's going to should be fairly quick. Should last 10-15 minutes tops. There's no like slicing anything. Like it's the kind of thing that you should recover from pretty fast. And we'll see how it goes. That's kind of where we're at. We're pretty optimistic that this will help. First comments, okay. Tough weekend for the boys. I feel like I've been saying that a decent amount as of late, but I feel like I hate to say this because I'm not trying to take anything away from the teams that beat us, but I really feel like we beat ourselves. Like we find ways to avoid playing the game we know how to play, which is, when I say game, is like our strategies, our fundamentals, what we do to win games, basically. Like what makes us good has been forgotten in our in our matches lately, and it's crazy, but it's like day to day.
So good news that they believe iLLeY will be on the mend. Of course, there's no guarantees because they thought he was on the mend quite a while ago now, and that wasn't really the case, unfortunately, for them. But I mean, yeah, the other point that Rambo made I thought was rather interesting was the fact that they kind of feel like they beat themselves this major. I think this example is probably the clearest example of it, to be honest, over on, of course, the Thieves series. The first series against Florida, you could argue rather similar. I mean, somehow Florida, whatever reason, I feel like it's just the way Florida play the game, in that they have players that just rely heavily on slaying, and it seems to match up really well and kind of counter what OpTic do, in the same way that Toronto seem pretty good against practically everyone, but get countered by FaZe every time they play them, and maybe similarly to OpTic and of course the Toronto Ultra last time around last year. But I think this was kind of the key situation. Up 1-0 in the series, Scump is snapping on people like this, having a disgusting tournament so far. Like they went up 4-1, of course, in this map, and then the critical moment happened where Dashy falls off the map, and then we get statistics like this. Now, the frustrating thing I think about this is that really, okay, Dashy falls off the map, but I think a lot of teams in the league will, okay, manage to regain relatively quickly, right, and say, okay, whatever, it's 4-2, let's just close out this map. map and then capitalize on that advantage and go on to win the series. But of course, that's not what happened here, right? They lost that map 6-5. Then I think that was what really spiraled the next two maps. They certainly didn't look like themselves. Scump had a really tough time the last few maps as well. And, I think that's maybe the thing. Prelude played pretty well individually here, but I do think there's an element of which the kind of mental factor here, like Dashy individually, of course, had a pretty rough time as well. The last couple of maps of the series as well. Certainly very different to what he was doing before he fell off the map, right? So things certainly spiraled out of control for the OpTic guys. I'm guessing Rambo's thinking like they kind of threw it away themselves, because if they hadn't, it seems like they kind of lost full and couldn't probably regain. And maybe that's kind of what they think about the whole iLLeY situation, is that with iLLeY in the team, this might not have been the same story, right? He might have been able to compose them in the game, say, look guys, focus up, because effectively he was coming into this role to be the leadership figure on the team, and losing him might not just have the impact in terms of his, ability on a LAN environment to clutch up and have great search and destroy numbers and put up consistent figures, but also to actually lead and compose the team in these type of situations. I'm sure Rambo thinks they probably should have been able to compose themselves regardless, but obviously wasn't the case this time around, right? So I'm sure interesting words from Rambo, and I thought some interesting words from, I'm sure, the team to consider behind the scenes as to exactly why they effectively let this happen and how they can make sure it doesn't happen again. Because I do feel like, especially early on in the season, we saw that OpTic were effectively the most clutch team in the entire game. Like, if they could be down, they had some search and destroy performances earlier on the season when iLLeY was in the team, where they were looking rather good. They'd have some sort of advantage. They would throw that advantage a little bit. Maybe it's a 5-3 search and destroy. It goes to 5-5, but then OpTic still clutch up in the round 11. That's something that the OpTic team of last year certainly didn't do, and we talked about it a lot in stage 1. Like, wow, this OpTic team feels really different. They all of a sudden, okay, they're getting into clutch situations, but they're actually winning them. And that's something that OpTic last year didn't do, and that's something that this OpTic team at this event didn't do either. So maybe iLLeY is the factor there, and with any luck, he's going to be good to go again for the Major 4 qualifiers, because I feel like if he can't come back for the start of the Major 4 qualifiers that do begin in 2.5 weeks' time, then, if he can't come back then is he going to come back midway through? It might get a bit messy, right? Especially because there's not long between that Major 4 qualifiers, the Major 4 itself, and then the World Championship just after that. And they need all the practice they can get with iLLeY if he's going to be back in time. Hopefully he is, but of course, I'm sure we'll see about that. This is just some interesting stats here from Brian's stats as we close out the video. Thought this is remarkable, actually. Scump and Simp have now lost the same amount of grand finals in their career. Scump is 31-10 in finals. Simp is actually 8-10. The fact that he's made so many grand finals out of relatively few events is incredible. But they've both lost 10 finals in their history, and Simp, of course, has won far less. This kind of the percentages right here of kind of the players that win the most percentage of grand finals. Crimsix, as I thought, was pretty impressive, actually. 76%, despite making 50 grand finals, is quite something to behold. And just to mention this real quick from Miles to Ross, because it's possible that we're going to get some announcements about, okay, what exactly is going on with the World Championship here over the coming weeks. And Miles is kind of pushing the whole London thing. Doubt that's going to be the case, unfortunately, maybe next year. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button. Tells you YouTube gods, it's a good video. Others like you should see it as well. And I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.